Most of us use credit cards or borrow money at one time or another.
We have a mortgage on our house, but it would be a real problem if we spent way more than we made and racked up a bunch of debt.
How much is too much? The US government is $21 trillion in debt. That seems like too much, especially since 43% of the country's debt is held by foreign investors.
A lot of people think we need to rein in the national debt, but they don't necessarily agree on how to do it. Here are 3 possible options, along with drawbacks to consider for each.
It's not right to pass this huge debt on to our kids. I think rich people and corporations should pay more in taxes because they earn more. And look, why should a family that makes $50,000 a year pay Social Security taxes on all of their earnings when a family that makes $500,000 only pays taxes on the first 27% of what they make? I think we should roll back the recent tax cuts.
And we should cut down on spending, especially in big ticket programs like defense. Granted, we might not feel as safe if we cut down military spending, and I guess raising taxes could throw our economy into a tailspin. There would be trade-offs to consider.
Nobody wants to give up their benefits or programs, and politicians just go along with spending money we don't have to keep their base happy.
Right. We need ways to make the government stop overspending, like a constitutional amendment that forces the government to keep a balanced budget. A lot of states have that already.
Or making Congress show how each new program will be paid for before it can pass.
Pay as you go.
Government programs ought to be looked at every few years to make sure they're still working or even necessary before they get funded again.
More endless political wrangling.
And this could make it harder to deal with emergency situations like hurricanes or floods. And that could be a real drawback.
Sure, this can reduce future debt, but it doesn't do anything about all the debt we already have.
Right.
I think if we concentrated on improving the economy, that tax revenues would go up. And then the debt wouldn't be such a big problem in comparison. Things like better job training and a massive infrastructure program and lower corporate taxes could really help the US compete financially with other countries.
But if we lower taxes and spend more, then the debt goes even higher, right? And it's already too large as is. Is that an acceptable trade-off? The national debt is complicated, and there's a lot of disagreement on how we should go about it.
Should all of us have to tighten our belts, or should we ask more from large corporations or those who are wealthy?
Should we take drastic action to force lawmakers to shrink the debt? And if we do, what services are we willing to live without?
To find answers, we need to deliberate about what we're willing to sacrifice and what will be the best decision for our communities and our country. We have to face up to some hard trade-offs. So let's start talking.
Good evening. My name is Janet Hansen, and I'm welcoming you to our model facilitation of a deliberation. And we are using a format developed by the National Issues Forum Institute, and we're going to be discussing tonight a nation in debt, because probably many of us are concerned about the degree of debt that we're experiencing as a nation here in the United States. So our question tonight is, how can we pay the bills? What we're going to be doing is looking at 3 broad options, and you'll hear more about that later. Each person around this table will hopefully take the opportunity to weigh in, because one of the tenets of civil discussion is that everybody here at this table has a valuable insight to share. And so the design is such that people will have that opportunity to weigh in, and we believe in the value of everybody's story. I'm going to allude to the poster that's hanging on the wall, the Principles of Civic Discussion. one of the things the things that we value are seek understanding and common ground, expect and explore conflicting viewpoints, give everyone an opportunity to speak, listen respectfully and thoughtfully, offer and examine support for claims, appreciate communication differences, stay focused on the issues, and respect time limits. And what I want to do next is ask if anybody around the table has anything to add. Do you think anything needs to be added to those principles? Okay. Our topic is been put together by the National Issues Forum Institute, and they do a process of talking to many people all over the United States, listening to many opinions. And so the three options that you'll hear are a synthesis of those ideas, and they will trigger, I hope, what you'll see to be a very diverse and wide discussion. So what I'd like to turn to next is let everybody around our table briefly introduce themselves and share a short statement telling your story, especially as it pertains to this issue around national indebtedness. So I'm going to start to my left with Gary. So say your name, give us a short statement about your story and anything else you want to add.
Okay, I'm Gary Swartzendruber. I was born and raised on a small family farm in Michigan. Instead of staying farming, I went to university in Michigan, Indiana, and Iowa, and became faculty at Iowa State University in human behavior. And my father-in-law, who is the best psychologist I've ever met, would come to visit, and he would throw a sheet of paper out and say, you probably won't even be interested in this, or it'd be a folder. You probably won't be interested in this, but just peruse it at your leisure. That's the best psychological approach ever. And 3 years later, we became involved in the John Deere family farm equipment business. And by the way, that folder always was full of financial statements.
Okay.
And it's good to be here.
Thanks, Gary. Erin?
I am Erin. Myself, along with millions of other Americans, I have quite a bit of student loan debt. So personally, I take an interest in this topic.
Thank you, Erin.
Okay. I'm Mike Trow. I teach school over at Salina Central. And the thought of a nation in debt is repugnant to me because when we have tax revenues of $2 trillion and we spend $4.5 trillion, we can't go on with that because it's going to wind up crushing everything that we're able to do or anything that we might be able to do in this country. So, getting a handle on this in some way is very necessary. That way, she has student loans, that way she's able to repay her student loans, and that's taken care of if we have a vital economy. So that's kind of where I come from on that.
All right, thanks, Mike. Sarah.
My name is Sarah Welsh. I am a single mom of 3 kids. I went through college as a single mom, overcame abusive situation, and had very minimal support from family getting through things and getting through life. I graduated. I have 2 associates and a bachelor's degree now, and now I'm a marketing director for a nonprofit, and I've been very involved in a lot of nonprofit on top of being a single mom and going to school. But I have accrued a lot of debt to get where I am now. So I'm very involved in this topic.
All right, thanks, Sarah.
My name is Jennifer, and I have 3 kids of different ages, and it kind of scares me leaving all of this for them. So.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Maribel Garcia Cerna, and I do go to school. I do not have any debts, thanks God I don't. I try to work up my grades so that I can get scholarships, and so far my GPA is really good. So, but you know, I wish that we could get a little bit get better pay, so that way we don't have to end up in debt like many students. Maybe the pay was a little better because the taxes are higher, everything goes up, but the minimum wage just doesn't go up, and that is just ridiculous. I'm trying to get my associates in business and my bachelor's in social work. It seems like a far dream every time. It should be closer, but it seems farther and farther. So hopefully one day I will finish and not with the debt.
And I'm Janet. I'm the Talk Salina facilitator, and I'm a citizen that's also worried about the debt our communities are laboring under. I worry a lot about young people who are just enmeshed in debt, and I worry about the way our communities seem to be pulling apart instead of pulling together to take care of each other. And so I think we all have a real strong stake in this topic. So we have a limited amount of time, and what we do is we try to put ourselves on a little bit of a time diet. We're going to try to talk about each of these three options in about a 20-minute time frame. And again, want to try to give people time to talk, and we've already arranged ahead of time, and Jennifer's agreed to be our note taker, and she's going to kind of draw out our high points, look at our big conclusions. And so we're going to go right to option one. I'm actually going to take just a minute to start my timer so that I can kind of keep an eye on the time, and again, we'll try to stay on our time diet. Option one, and everybody has this booklet in front of them. This option says that we have let the national debt become this large through complacence about the size of government and many services and benefits it provides. If we do not want to pass the burden of debt onto the next generation, we must do the responsible thing and act now in a spirit of compromise to make the vital sacrifices, including both raising taxes and cutting spending, that are our only way out of this problem. This option, as a primary drawback, this option calls for higher taxes and could require us to work later in life and pay more for fewer benefits. And so now what we're going to do is go around, and everybody is going to read an action and a drawback, and everybody, if you decide you don't want to participate in any step of the activity, you can always choose to just pass. But as it is, Gary, would you read our first action and drawback?
As in here, option one.
As in, right there. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Action, as in right here.
You're actually, yep,
Right there.
right there. Okay.
Very good. Under option one, all right. Actions raise raise taxes across the board and revoke the 2017 tax cuts. We should all contribute to getting the debt back under control.
Go ahead.
And continue.
No, I want you to read the drawback that opposes that.
Right away.
Yeah.
So we'll limit ourselves to that, okay. So the drawback of that action could be raising tax rates across the board could push the country into another recession, leading millions of Americans to cut back on spending, which would undercut the economy overall.
Okay. Erin, the second one.
Raise the age for partial Social Security benefits to 64 and full benefits to 69. People are working and living longer than when the program was initiated. Excuse me. The drawback is raising the Social Security retirement age would compel nearly everyone to work longer and would be especially hard on people doing manual labor and service jobs.
Okay. Get rid of the salary cap for Social Security taxes. The whole nation benefits from a robust retirement system. The drawback is this is a large tax increase that would force higher income people to pay much more into those systems than they can ever get back in benefits.
Okay, and Sarah?
Reduce federal spending, including the defense budget. The drawback is this could mean less flexible U.S. military. Base closures could crash the economies of communities, hurting both businesses that serve the soldiers and civilians who work there.
Okay, and now what we're going to do is kind of do a go-round or showing of the hands. And we're going to see if one of these options, one of these actions is more interesting to people. And so I'm just going to ask people to do a show of hands. On the first action, raising taxes across the board, who's interested in hearing, in discussing that point? And basically, you can abstain if you want to, but basically the ones that get the most votes, those are the ones we're gonna. That's where we're gonna focus our energy.
In other words, not what our personal opinion is, but just hear any of these.
Do you want to talk about it?
I go for that.
Yeah. All right. So that's 3 of us, right? Okay. Raise the age for partial Social Security benefits to 64 and full benefits to 69. Who wants to talk about that?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about it.
You want them all, right, Gary?
Yeah.
There you go.
I know, it's kind of like the kid in the candy store, right? Okay. And then the third one, get rid of the salary cap for Social Security taxes. The whole nation benefits from a robust retirement system.
Yeah, I really like to talk about it.
I'm a little interested in that one.
Yeah.
And then the last one, reduce federal spending. Who wants to talk about that? Yeah. Okay. So just kind of, Jennifer, what the most people were most interested in the last one. And then it looks like the first and the third one got the next votes, and the last one was raising the age on Social Security. So let's talk a little bit about reducing federal spending, including the defense budget. What are some of your thoughts on that? I guess what I want to start out by saying is, Mike, you might remember this for sure. I don't know, Gary, if you were in the community when Schilling closed. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Before I got here.
Yeah, but it was a big event.
Yeah,
because
and it hurt.
But part of me thinks that the genius of defense spending is that it's so well dispersed throughout the states and the communities that it creates a monster that demands feeding.
Right.
And so that's kind of the conundrum. But what thoughts do people have about this topic?
Well, I kind of do want to piggyback on your experience with Schilling because I grew up in Manhattan.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And when Big Red went overseas, it affected Manhattan. And then when they came back, there was no houses because the surrounding community, like Big Red, really blew up the economy so much that they couldn't keep up. And now look where Manhattan is now, like a very thriving community. Mm-hmm. So I've had a lot of experiences to kind of coincide with that too. But my biggest thing about reducing the federal spending is war machines, bombs, the amount, you don't really spend $1 million building a bomb. Where is that million? But we pay into that because there's no competitive market for war. You can charge pretty much what you want, and it's a government program, or government's paying for it. So it really, we're spending so much on something that initially probably wouldn't even cost nearly as much, but we have this expanded budget to go spend money on that, and it's, to me, quite unnecessary. I don't know how else to really control that other than the government turning away, which means, you know, we're not going to have the high tech or anything, or be the on top of the war, or, you know, the powerhouse, what we need for defenses. But I mean, we're also getting to a place now where we're more about economy wars than we are going in and invading more. So, I mean, that's just kind of one of those things. How do you control that? And then I think there is a lot of spending that's being done on military that could really be changed.
Okay. Mike, you look like you had something to say.
This topic reminds me of what President Eisenhower said. They pointed out, hey, you're a general. How come you don't want more military spending? And he says, if we're going to win the Cold War, we're going to win it with our economy, folks, not with our military, which kind of goes in with what you were saying. You know, if we could redirect, and this is just one thing I'd like to throw out here when it comes to spending, you know, we kind of have to think of what do we really want to spend the money on.
Yeah.
You know, I believe Eisenhower's military budget was like $40 billion a year, and he held it to that.
Right.
No, we will win it with a strong economy. Well, look what's happened. Our economy started going down. People started messing with us. So it's not really, maybe we don't need that big military to kind of answer your question. Maybe we need a small, effective military, but we need this strong economy that can, you know, create jobs and manufacture and on and on. So that was kind of what I'm thinking as she was talking there. So.
I think it's really interesting that this question focused in on defense cutting the defense budget, and nobody at this table has been too uncomfortable with that. Am I right? Are there any other dissenting voices?
Well, I guess, again, something I always say, we need to be more like ancient Carthage and less like ancient Rome. Mm-hmm. Rome led with its army, you know, wherever it went. Yeah, we'll crush you, and then we'll build you up, and you can be our friends then. Carthage would come in and say, hey, we have this doodad here that's better than anything else that you've ever seen. We'd love to be your friend, but hey, if you don't want to be our friend, we can go down the road over here. They already said they wanted to, you know. So I think just if we could rethink it.
If we weren't going to spend, and again, I'm going to obligatorily tell you that America's military budget is equivalent to that of what, the next 6 countries that have military budgets. So we spend way more than almost anybody else does. Nobody even comes close to us. But if we were going to take some of that military spending and kind of deal with some of the pain that goes along with it, where would we spend our money?
If you're taking it away from the military, where else would we need to put it?
Mm-hmm.
I think we need a lot of infrastructure. We need to start taking care of, you know, people who have houses and they have still asbestos in their house and they still have lead poisoning to deal with. They're not clean water. Some of these houses are so old and so outdated, they can't fix anything, and it's affecting their health, and so they're getting on Medicare, Medicaid. We need to be more proactive in the preventative stuff in our economy and more sustainable ways of building and doing things and investing in that more long term. And I think if we think we're so advanced right now that, I mean, we really can pull this off and really benefit it long term.
Mm-hmm. I want to hear from some other people. If we weren't going to spend money on military, what would we spend it on? I want to hear from somebody I haven't heard from in a while.
Well, I think just like her, in poverty, there's a lot of, this country is so rich, but there's so many people out there suffering too much. There's a lot of kids going to school. You're a teacher at the school. I was teaching fourth and fifth grade, and a lot of the kids that came to the class, I didn't know why they were acting as I knew them. They didn't have food, and then I realized they had this program every Friday where they can give them this little package, this little Ziploc bag of food. I mean, really? You just sit there and eat it in 30 minutes, and that is for the weekend. I mean, the money could be spent on more of that stuff and food banks like in the community. That I think the money could be spent on that. There's a lot of poverty.
All right. Erin, do you have any thoughts on this?
I would say, why not spend it on education?
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about debt. I mean, the trillions of dollars from, with student loan debt is what portion of that? I mean, why not start there?
There's a lot of discussion about the student loan debt crisis. Some people think it's an up and coming bubble, even.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I haven't heard anybody talk about health care. And so I'm the nurse.
I touched on it a little bit.
Yeah. So where does health care fit into this? Jennifer, do you have any thoughts about that? You have kids. They're sometimes healthcare consumers.
In more ways than they know at their age.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there are so many kids. I mean, Kansas is one of those states that has a law that says every kid needs health insurance, and it's required for each kid to have health insurance in the state of Kansas. And if they can't get it through their parents' work, then the state gives it to them.
Right.
And moms and dads have to meet income requirements and whatnot. But I mean, yeah, if all that money that we're spending in here could be put there, I mean, so many kids could be.
So I think that's where I think there's a lot of consensus in this group. Let's talk about raising taxes across the board and revoking the 2017 tax cuts. Let's kind of shift to that perspective. Let's talk about raising taxes across the board.
I wouldn't think raising your taxes across the board is really going to be effective. I think when it comes to raising taxes, we need to be more selective, so to speak, because I've worked in the nonprofit world, and I've learned how many donors, just even here in the city, that have thousands of dollars just sitting in a bank just to give somebody. And, even wealthy people in Wichita, I mean, the Veneer family donated $6 million to K-State, especially for their football program. And I'm just like, football players are getting paid $1 million just to stand there and yell at people. And I'm like, yeah, but our teachers, what are they getting paid? Like, that's what doesn't make any sense to me. I'm seeing all this money floating. Why are we having people struggling? There's no reason for it, none. And it's just, I know a lot of time with the wealthy individuals, they're just like stingy. And I have family members that are like that. They just don't want to give it to just anybody. You have to fit their model of who you should be before they give it to you.
Of a worthy recipient.
Yes.
Mike, do you have some thoughts about taxation?
Oh, I got all kinds of thoughts about taxation. Most of them are not in agreement with you, but anyway, with everybody else here.
That's what we need to hear.
But anyway, taxes, in order to pay our national debt, and that's just our national debt. We haven't talked really a whole lot, a couple of you have, about personal debt, but and that's all on top of that. We're going to have to raise taxes in order to pay the debt. Okay, and that's hard for me to say that, but that's just a truth. But again, we get back to another thought I have is, it's not the government's money, it's the individual's money. Still, we have these bills out here, just like in our personal life. Okay, we use our credit card too much. There comes a time when we've got to stop excess spending. And we've got to start living inside of our means. And if that means that, military's not going to get what they get, if it means, other programs, we've got to do that.
So the 2017, it actually talks categorically in here about revoking the 2017 tax cuts, which kind of disproportionately benefited the very richest. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I'm generally in favor of cutting taxes anytime we can. But again, it's back to, we have this debt, and the vast majority of the people, especially the ones that got the tax breaks, are now, they're doing quite well because of it.
Yeah.
And so if we could do something to help pay off the national debt, that's, we've really got to do that, because think of it like a vacuum cleaner that sucks all the good stuff out.
Yes.
If the percentage paid on the debt, if it goes up, half a point, you probably help me out on the numbers. It doubles the debt.
Astronomical, yeah. Yeah.
So we have to think about that. Now, right now, we got some pretty good percentages out there. But tomorrow that could change. And when it changes.
You're talking about cheap money.
Yeah.
Cheap money online, which has its own issues. Okay, now I'm going to make us switch gears a little bit. We're going to go look at option. Yep. Can't find them grinding, right? And so we're going to look at option 2. So you can change, you can switch to the next page. This option says that the national debt is out of control because we lack the basic mechanisms we need to ensure the government acts in a responsible way. People willingly accept more benefits and programs than government can afford, and our political parties are too willing to help spend money we do not have. The only way that we can stop this cycle is by compelling fiscal responsibility. The primary drawback is that this option would decrease the federal deficit, but it does not reduce the debt we already owe. It will likely make it harder for government to respond to crises or fund and operate programs that people depend on. And so I think I'm going to start with Sarah reading the first action and drawback.
Amend the Constitution to include a balanced budget requirement, the same requirement virtually every state has. The drawback is amending the Constitution is enormously difficult and potentially controversial. However, if the amendment did pass, it would trigger immediate deep cuts in programs for vulnerable people, and the sudden changes might well jar the economy and the stock market.
Okay, Jennifer?
Impose strict pay-as-you-go rules on Congress, requiring that no program or expenditure can be approved until it can be shown how it will be paid for. The drawback, ironclad pay-as-you-go rules would reduce the flexibility the government currently has to meet unexpected needs or invest in strategic resources. It could lead to extensive layoffs in the public and private sectors.
Maribel?
Okay, action, implement a requirement with a sunset or expiration date so that we can periodically make sure the expenditure is still worthwhile. This means popular, well-functional programs will have to be debated and open up to partisan bickering over and over again.
Okay, and Gary?
Ban ban earmarks or pork permanently, members of Congress should not be able to win favor with constituents by twisting the appropriations process to result in special favors for their home district. Drawbacks: earmarks are a very small portion of the budget that fund local infrastructure and community development projects. Banning them sounds good, but it would hurt smaller communities most.
Okay, we're going to do that process of show of hands. Okay, so amend the Constitution to include a balanced budget requirement, the same requirement that virtually every state has. Who's interested in talking about that? I would have been disappointed otherwise. Okay, and then impose a strict pay-as-you-go rule on Congress, requiring that no program or expenditure can be approved until it can be shown how it will be paid for.
I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So we're not so wild about this one. All right. Implement a requirement that the establishing legislation for all federal agencies and programs include a sunset or expiration date. Who's interested in that? Okay. All right.
Oh, yeah, I think we need to talk about that.
And then ban earmarks or pork permanently. Members of Congress should not be able to win favor with constituents by twisting appropriations process. Who wants to talk about that?
Oh, you mean like the gut and go that the Kansas legislature uses? I didn't say that.
Okay, so actually, Jennifer, did you keep track of what people liked the best?
I think it would be the last three.
The last three.
Although
Okay.
all of them kind of
Yeah.
got me.
So I think I saw, let's go with the implement a requirement that establishing legislation for all federal agencies and programs include a sunset or expiration date. Okay, so.
And I guess what I'm thinking here is you're now asking an alcoholic on his own to stop drinking. Okay? Because how are you going to get government? First of all, they won't pass the laws because they know that it'll hurt their reelection chances. Okay? You know, then okay, let's say they do somehow get up the gumption, yeah, we're going to do this. And then here comes these people in, very good reasons, very good excuse, nothing wrong with it, you know, they're really hurting, they need this program. Okay, I doubt our politicians' ability to look in their eyes and say, well, you know, you can go over here to the Salvation Army, they'll take care of you. I doubt their desire to do that, and because I haven't seen it from them. So,
I think what's maybe even more alarming to me is that it almost seems like Congress has become progressively less competent at negotiating compromise in almost any
compromise.
Yeah.
Is that a new type of coffee I can get at Starbucks?
Yeah, and that's a worrisome idea. But on the other hand, this kind of has a feel of reinventing the wheel repetitively, you know. But Gary, what are your thoughts about sunsetting legislation?
Well, it should be reviewed. A good example is in the state of Kansas, when political parties change, certain political parties, we won't mention any names, but completely obliterated Medicaid program. And that same party determined that started out to have 180,000 LLCs, limited liability corporations who would pay zero income tax. And a lot of us had those, and the anticipation is the Laffer curve, trickle-down economics, and all those LLCs were supposedly going to expand their businesses and hire more people and make more money. Well, within 6 months, there were 300,000 LLCs, and none of them were paying taxes. And we hired three private insurance companies to take on Medicaid, and we lost $1 billion from the national government, or that we could have got from
Medicaid expansion. Yeah.
And poor people suffered more, and those of us with LLCs didn't have to pay taxes. And everybody says, "Well, why didn't you just turn your taxes in anyway?" Well, there's nobody was going to pay them. And that's a perfect example of imposing or passing for the benefit of the Laffer curve. Just imagine, 300,000 LLCs paid no taxes. That cost
the state of Kansas a considerable amount of money.
And not taking Medicaid from the national government. So right there we lost, $2 billion right away.
So I have a question, and I'm kind of going to hop up because we kind of agreed that the last three. So I'm going to look at those pay-as-you-go rules. Now, Mike, am I correct? Haven't we had a little bit of that in Congress?
It has been tried, yes.
Yeah.
And then they were like, the collar's a little too tight, folks. Yeah. We need more money. We need more money. So, and of course they got more money. Yeah. Right. Or they found a way around it. So that's why I'm talking about, there needs to be a change of opinions in Washington, because they could have done that without going back and getting more money. But yes, they've tried that before. If I'm remembering right, a lot of it was back in the 90s. They tried a lot of that.
Well, I think that there's actually some vestiges of this, because I think that's part of the balanced budget amendment, is that if you propose a new program, you have to find something to cut to pay for it.
Yeah, that has been spoken of.
And it's been sort of a zero-sum game. I mean, as far as I can see, it hasn't brought us to solvency. It hasn't brought us any closer to solvency. But in our current framework, who gets austerity imposed upon them, and who gets less accountability?
I would say austerity is put on any program that will bring attention to that. Let's say a children's program, okay? They always cut that. Why? Look at my child. My child needs this program. Then they get the press talking about that. You take some program over here where it's, I just make something up here, study of the substructure of a interstate highway. Okay, nobody even knows what it's about.
But
they don't even deal with that.
I actually think austerity has fallen disproportionately on the social safety net programs.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
I know DC, when Brownback started with the tax relief, we were starting to first struggle. I remember a lot of the impact that I went through, and people that I know, they made it severely hard for people to get on Medicaid, Medicare. So much so that I know people, one person I know of, her father passed away before he could even get approved. And I fought the state for a boyfriend, he's an ex-boyfriend now, but I was with him for 2 years, had diabetes most of his life, it was hereditary. He didn't have a choice. He was going blind. And I had to fight the state to get him on Medicare, because his doctor flat out told me he was too much of a liability for workers. And then we had DCF restructuring where it made it harder for, they put a lot of stress on the staff members, which I really think that's why they started locking the doors, because the stress of the staff members, because they were being strung so thin, made it difficult for them to deal with the people in poverty coming in who they themselves are stressed out because they don't have access. And so it made such a huge conflict that they had to go around to all these DCF places and up the security, which, you know, anybody can walk into our schools and do that to our kids. But, you know, don't do that to our DCF workers. But, sorry, that was just tangent. Anyway, it was frustrating for me to go in. Now you have to have verification before you can even go into a DCF office about who you are and what you do. Like it became so, you know, that was the whole purpose. The whole purpose was to get people off of these programs. Well, when I went through Brownback, connected with DCF and this other program to do leadership training for these community members, and they came here to Salina, and we were supposed to figure out these barriers in our communities and figure out how to get these people off assistance. You can't. I mean, this was like 5 years ago, and they still haven't figured it out. Because when you go into a workplace and they see that you have kids and they have to provide childcare, they have to provide extra medical care, you are an extra expense as a family member, and so they're going to toss you away, and that's the problem with the business structure, which is why I really believe in the government structure to kind of come in, everybody kind of pays in to relieve some of that, so that a family member can go in and go to work and not have that be as an extra debt to your worker. And you can go in and work as an equal as somebody who doesn't have kids, you know?
So I always think, and I'm really touched by the burden of educational debt. I think it's a significant problem. So I actually got a degree in nursing, going to school part-time while working as a nurse. But my credit hours were $35 a credit hour. Okay. So all of this discussion brings me back to a question. Everybody seems a little bit not that happy with the accountability methods. Everybody agrees that there needs to be more accountability, but we don't really seem to be seeing accountability from our Congress. And I guess that's what I want to spend a few minutes talking about. What do we think would bring more accountability to our Congress?
I think that's kind of difficult, because I remember when Brownback was coming up for his re-election, and I had gotten involved politically with all the stuff that was going on, and watching him fight with the Kansas legislator on the school budget and all this other stuff, and eventually they were like, you know, you need to, what you're doing is unconstitutional with the school budget, and so we started finally filtering money in. Well, then he used that in his ploy for his second term to be like, hey, I've raised school funding, look at me, I did good, and all this other stuff. And then he got, of course, reelected, and then it turned around and he again started messing with the school budget again.
Right.
And it's kind of like, you know, it's, unless you're involved on a continuous basis, which is emotionally draining, first of all, it's really hard to really know, you know, how do we take accountability, you know, how do
we take it back? So I still think one of the kernels that you said, which is citizens being active, is really important. And any other ideas to create more accountability?
Well, the one thing that I think of is we need to look at them and say, we gave you a chance, you didn't do it, so we're going to find another way. You know, we're going to get in with this organization here. We're going to do that. And then what you'll have is the politicians will then come all running out and say, yeah, I agree with this. I agree with this. that to me is one way I would think. If we just simply find another way. Right now, they have the microphone thrust in front of them. And what do you think about SB 1762? You know, they have that. Oh, they're in heaven.
So where does campaign finance fit into this? Where does, money equal to speech? Where does that fit into this discussion?
Money is the lifeblood of politics.
Yeah.
As a libertarian, I run into that every election time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, because we don't get the press, so we don't get the money, so we don't get we don't get noticed.
Mm-hmm.
On and on. So campaign finance. I mean, I don't know why we have to have 2 years to elect a president. Why can't we wait till July of 2020 and then everybody declares?
Mm-hmm.
August 1st we have our primaries, and why can't we do it that way?
Okay.
So.
And I'm going to give just everybody around the table one last word on that topic, maybe, which is to me an accountability topic. How do we bring more accountability? Erin, do you have any thoughts?
I don't. Yeah. Not at the moment.
It's a tough nut. It's a tough nut. Jennifer?
The only thing I can think of is Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
From what I've heard, and I might be completely off on this, but I have heard that there was a time limit on it and it was supposed to end, that it was just something to get people back on their feet again, and then it was supposed to be over.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been almost 100 years and it is still a mess and it is still going.
Okay.
And I mean,
so for you, that's a sunset.
Do we enjoy it so much that we don't? I mean, where does there's a certain level of I enjoy this what they're giving me, so I'm not going to fight to stop it. Kind of mentality.
Okay.
I pass. I don't have nothing to say.
Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is move on to option 3, and so. Option 3 is, this option says that while our debt the growth rate of our economy, we should ensure that our businesses are competitive internationally and that they have incentives to create jobs and invest here in the United States, not overseas. Significant investments in infrastructure and education will also help the economy grow faster. A larger economy generates more tax revenues, makes the debt less harmful, and is better for the country in the long run, according to this option. A primary drawback is that most economists remain unconvinced that a larger economy will substantially shrink the federal debt. This option will increase the national debt in the short term without a guarantee that it would help reduce it in the future. And so, Mike, I'm going to have you start with actions and drawbacks.
Okay. Reduce the corporate tax rate until we are more competitive with countries like Switzerland, Canada, Germany, and the UK. Okay. The drawback. Reducing the corporate tax rate even lower means less money for the government at a time when our deficits are circling $1 trillion a year.
Okay. Sarah?
Reduce unnecessary and burdensome regulations that place a drag on the economy and increase the cost of living. Drawback is regulations are necessary to protect people and the environment from harm.
Okay. Jennifer?
Fund and execute a massive infrastructure improvement initiative. We cannot thrive or attract new businesses with roads and bridges in such serious disrepair. The drawback is pouring federal money into infrastructure just leaves our debt problem looming. We can't afford to wait.
Okay, and Gary.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
All right. Provide better and more effective job retraining programs through state and local colleges and universities. And the drawback, not everyone is ready to take on new jobs. Some people will choose new fields that are in danger of getting eliminated in
Okay. All right, so again, let's do kind of a go-round. Who is interested in talking about reducing the corporate tax rate? Okay.
I think we've kind of talked about it.
Yeah, I did too. I agree. Reduce unnecessary and burdensome regulations that place a drag on the economy and increase the cost of living. Who's interested in talking about that? Regulation. Okay.
Yeah, I'd talk about that.
Regulation. And then fund and execute a massive infrastructure improvement initiative. We cannot thrive or attract new businesses with roads or bridges in such serious disrepair. So that's infrastructure spending. I'll probably go for that one. And then provide better and more effective job retraining programs through state and local colleges and universities. All right, so I think probably what, am I right, Jennifer, what seemed to get the most interest is fund and execute infrastructure initiatives, and then job training, focus on job training.
I got 4 on providing. 4 people voted on that one, 3 on
on
these
that
one,
one.
and 2
Okay,
on that
so
one.
we're going to talk about job retraining first. Okay, who wants to start talking about job retraining? And so I'm interested in I guess the younger members of this table, what made you choose the field you chose?
I kind of started off when I first went through college. I got my first associate's degree at Salina Tech with commercial arts and advertisement, and I got into that degree because I had to really take a step back in my life after everything that I had gone through, after having my 3 children, and figure out what I needed to do. And I revisited what I loved from who I was before everything happened. And I used to love art. And I went into the field to try and get into graphic design, and it led me to Salina Tech. And I found out through Salina Tech I was really good at web stuff and coding and technological stuff. So I moved on to K-State, and I got an associate's and a bachelor's in digital media there. And I've really been able to, I really had to kind of think about, how can I best provide back into my community? I love psychology, I love art, I love, computers and the science field, and that's what really my degree really encompassed, all of that, and I've been able to really magnify that.
So training, training / retraining, because I think you'd have to do both, has been really valuable to you.
Yes.
Okay. Erin, do you want to talk a little bit about?
I have a dual bachelor's degree in business administration and accounting. And when I went, I graduated high school in '99, so it was more like that's just what you did. It was a push to, and I went back and forth between my major throughout that time. Ultimately, it was just, something, it's a general, it's broad, you could go into different things after that. One of my business instructors convinced me to go for the dual degree. You do so well in these classes, it's only so many more credit hours, and not talk about the much more money it's going to cost, but you'll be more employable, and it doesn't take you much longer to obtain that degree. I graduated in 2007, and during that time, their jobs weren't there. And I fell into the, you don't have the experience while you have the education, because people were really fighting for those jobs.
Yeah.
And it was shortly after that time where it became, the talk started about more knowing exactly what you're going to go to school for.
Right.
Trade schools, and that's when that started to come about again. So, yeah.
It's a double-edged sword.
It really is.
Yeah. Yep. Jennifer, do you have any thoughts about education or re-education or?
I think what she said, I think trade school is so important, and over the past 15, 20 years, we have put so much emphasis on you have to go to college, and that is the only way to achieve anything. That those trade jobs have been falling, and with that, also the smaller communities have been dying and falling to the wayside as well, because those college degrees, again, they take you to the larger communities where, there's more people and better jobs. So putting emphasis on those trade jobs is just as important.
Add to that, my husband is a plumber, and he went and got an associate's in plumbing, did like 18 months or something. He is the breadwinner in our home, I'll just say, and has no debt. So.
Maribel, any thoughts about education and retraining? Or just learning? You don't have to. Don't have to be retrained.
When I went to college, I wanted it to be a teacher, and I've always wanted it to, and it's still one of my dreams. But the thing is, the distance, the money, and all that, I cannot. So I had to choose social work, which I didn't like it, but I did a little bit of training. They sent me a few internship classes, and I did like what I was doing. I just didn't like the people. I'm still doing social work, but it's nothing that I like. I started talking to one of the teachers. I can't remember her name. She does accounting class, an accounting class over at K-State. She's really hyper.
I know who you mean.
I can't remember her name. I can't remember her name. She's really hyper. She's really nice, and then ever since I like it, I started going to Mr. Greg's class, and I thought, yes, business is what I want to do. Business is what I like, and I know there are a lot of people out there. They said it's the less paid job. You know, social worker opens a lot more doors, but I think with me being bilingual, it opens a lot of doors for in the business administration, because you know you can be a manager, can do whatever, and being bilingual, like I said, it opens a lot of doors. So I think business is my thing, and I love it. I love it more than the teaching, then I guess.
See,
I don't know.
You bring up a good point. You have to be happy, but you do. Again, you can't just say, I'm going to do this because society wants me to.
You know, they said the business, I talked to my parents, and they say business administration will give you less than being a teacher. And I say, yeah, but then the business is something that I like, and then doing something that I like and still getting paid for it. What else can you ask for?
What could you want? So I have a question, because we represent, you know, the silver hairs at the table. And so Mike and Gary, do you have any comments? Because I belong to a generation where going to school was just a win. It was just a slam dunk. And it does grieve me to see that that's not true for younger people. But your thoughts?
Just my thoughts on this whole topic here is, what does they say that people will change careers, 3 times in their lifetime? Well, that started with our generation, because I know my parents' generation. You got a job at age 18, and when they put you in the ground at age 63 or 64, you were still in that same job. And, you know, to me, you change as you go through life, you know. So what we're talking about, what you went through, and where we do need to go and find something else out there to do. To me, it's like, okay, I've climbed this mountain, I've conquered this hill. Okay, I'm done with this. I want to go try something else. And, you know, that's kind of the way it was when I was in the restaurant business. I'll brag a little bit. I was pretty good at it. Okay, but got a time when I needed something else. So then I got into education. And so, you know, it's just something as you go along, you need to always have that in your mind and always be thinking of it. What do I want to do tomorrow?
Yeah.
You know?
I'd like, are we out of time?
Go ahead. No,
I was
go
going to
ahead.
say, so just to kind of touch on that, I really think job training, retraining, I think we need to keep that open and flexible for people to move with the market. Because we can't, and I had this discussion, or political discussions with, I can't remember what country it was. It was like they were a big oil company and their economy tanked and all this other stuff.
Sounds like Venezuela.
Yeah, I think that was it. And when I got to looking at it, it was like, you know, their major income source was that oil economy. That was like pretty much it for what made them wealthy as a country. And when that was gone, so were they. And that's true as individuals in homes and stuff like that. We need to be able to move and be retrained and re-educated based on where the job market is, and because then that kind of coincides with, you know, businesses that come and go.
So,
yeah,
go ahead.
Jump in real quick.
No.
What was it? Boeing out here, when Boeing shut down, I happened to be going to a gym with some people who worked out there.
Yeah.
And they came in through the retraining. One guy, he was 64 and a half years old. He said they walked in and it was in the welding class. And the guy just says, "We'll take everybody." And he says, "I'm going to retire in 3 months." He says, "I don't care, we'll take you."
Yeah.
So, you know, to your point there, that's what it would be if you understood that in welding. Then, okay, you'd go. There's places back in Ohio that'll buy you a house or moving expenses, what else, and then you get an $80,000 a year job on top of it. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in there.
It's
what she said.
my experience has been that my education let me change hats.
Yeah.
And I realized that I was pretty lucky in that way, but it isn't always that way. So I think we do need to talk a little bit about infrastructure improvement because I think it's a really important topic. Any thoughts on infrastructure?
I think infrastructure is really kind of what it is. I agree too. It's an important topic. I mean, we have a transportation system that requires us. We need to move, and if we don't have the infrastructure to move, then we can't keep going. And then, you know, what I talked about earlier with the houses and the pipes, and people are getting sick, which is costing us way more money than if we just went in there, fixed it, and we don't have that problem anymore. But not only that, we now have somebody getting healthier to produce back into the economy. And I think that infrastructure is important as well, getting people moving, going, and quit. Our infrastructure needs to quit bringing each other down.
Yeah, things really are falling apart all over, and even in Salina with the new streetscape and everything. And gradually they're getting to filling the potholes and repaving some of the regular streets. But all over the nation, bridges are rusting, falling apart. Sinkholes in the big cities, cars go almost at the drop out of sight. The sewer systems, everything is falling apart. And a big investment in infrastructure would be nothing but good for the economy, from what I understand.
Who would infrastructure improvements employ?
Well, and it would employ the common blue-collar, hard-working people, and those are the people that are undernourished and underpaid.
Yeah.
And I mean, their wages are not keeping up now. In Salina, finally, well, Walmart, for example, now has a starting salary of $9 an hour.
$11.50.
11.
Is that, yeah?
It's $11.50 an hour.
And then they went up and are trying to get to 15 And even McDonald's is now, and they raised, I guess, theirs to $9.
No, I didn't know that.
Yes,
Yeah, I mean, I
McDonald's
know they did.
9.
But that is so minuscule because even in Salina, Kansas, 60% of the school, 60% of the students going to school are on free and reduced lunches, for crying out loud.
Well, Oakdale itself, a couple years ago, was 80% just for that school.
And again, all over the country, things are falling apart. But again, let me just make one simple. After I make 100, talk about Social Security, absolutely, this would solve it immediately. After I make $190,000, I no longer pay my 13% into Social Security and Medicare.
Yeah.
And that's not only ignorant, but dumb and stupid, in my opinion, because if everybody continued to pay in, if I make $1 million or $1 billion, let me keep paying, for crying out loud. Then it wouldn't bother, it wouldn't take anything out of my pocket. If everybody that makes over $190,000 would just keep paying in 13%. 13%, we'd have more than enough money, guess what, in 1 year. Social Security is not even close to going broke if that would be the system. And the same way with Medicare.
It's another way that systemically higher income people are let off the hook for supporting a program that is really the only support for many elderly people.
What big kick do people get out? 1% of the population owns 60% of the wealth.
Yeah.
And 10% of the population owns 90% of the wealth. That's atrocious.
Yeah.
That should be the last thing that should be happening in a country like that. So I think.
Yeah, and I think if I was told that, I can't remember if it was the top 5% or whatever, if they were to donate at least half of their income or take half of their income, we would have the national debt crisis solved within years.
Yeah.
And
So I have another question. This is a little tangential. It's certainly nothing that's on this board, but I think this is supposed to be a forum for thinking bigger. And one of my areas of interest is sustainable growth. And so what does it mean in our community of Salina to strive for sustainable growth? Does anybody have any concerns about sustainable versus unsustainable growth in Salina?
Yeah.
Well, right now in Salina, it's if everything goes out exactly as they say it is, then we'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
But we learned that projections are already falling way short.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the main thing there. Sustainable. I guess we'd talk about maybe a smaller growth today, but something that can continue. Again, we can get back to what we've mentioned 3 or 4 times here. It gets back to the type of individual that's making the decision. Mm-hmm. And if they're going to take the infrastructure money and use it to go to the Bahamas, well, then Atlanta's water is still going to be running out across the highways. But anyway, that's just my main thing. If we just change the philosophy of the people in power, then a lot of these problems will take care of themselves.
Does that mean that voters need to reclaim some power?
Voters need to reclaim a whole lot of power and stop saying, oh, well, he belongs to this party. You're talking about last time Brownback was elected. I heard that from a coworker. Mm-hmm. Well, no, I'm going to vote for Governor Brownback. He's a conservative, right?
Well,
I'm like,
not much conservative going on there.
Okay. But anyway, yes.
So now we've looked at all 3 of these discussions, and so what areas of common ground did we find at this table? And this is
among those 3, right?
Yeah. I actually
among ourselves.
Yeah, at this table, I I, for one, was struck by nobody had a whole lot of qualms about seeing defense spending cut. That seemed to be a commonality to me. Jennifer, you've been doing recording. Have you noticed some trends?
That we all agree that something needs to change, that nothing is good.
Be a little bit more specific about that. What are some
course.
areas of change that we seem to have some common interest in?
I mean, really, it all comes down to just accountability up at the top, and it's not just a national level either. It's a state and even a city, town level as well.
Oh, we're voting for a city commission this year, too. Oh.
That was one of the things that was frustrating for me was when the local elections were coming up, hardly heard anything about it. And that was frustrating because I don't know who these people are and you're expecting me to vote. And there's hardly anything locally for that. So that was kind of frustrating, but.
I think finding out good, high quality information about local candidates is probably about to get more difficult. And it's certainly, we're taking advantage of the Salina Media Group tonight, and it's certainly one of the things that they do for this community is they give specific forums for us to learn about our candidates. And so that's a little plug, so sorry. I digressed a little. What tensions or trade-offs did people sense in this discussion?
I kind of noticed there was a different mindset from, the age differences too, especially around the school and its importance and us thriving and pushing forward with jobs.
We probably pretty much agreed on the wealthiest among us shouldn't rest on our laurels. Now, it's nice I can give away a whole lot of money. You talked about the family that contributed $6 million, but it was $60 million.
Yeah, $60 million. Yeah, sorry.
$60 million.
$60 million.
Recently, $1 million to Candace Westman. And they're lovely, wonderful people. And we need to have more opportunity to spin off from there, and their funding, educational institutions. But I really think that our whole system is still designed to let the 1%, the 10% control all the wealth, and the rest of the people are just
that's what oligarchies do.
Yeah, kind of stranded, and so that's when the political response pattern is really, really important. But just to put out a little statistics, out of 100 people that are registered to vote and vote all the time, what percent would you guess, or how many out of 100 people that vote all the time, what percent, how many out of 100 know the issues well? It will shock you. I'll give you a big hint.
Probably not very many.
Who would just say? Who would say
40%.
40%.
I'd say 20.
So I'd go more like 20.
Yeah, I was going to say, because only like about 40% of Americans vote.
Actually vote.
Yeah.
Well, no.
And so then to feel really good about your level of information on.
The people that vote all the time, only 5 out of 100 of those people know anything about much.
It's
a pretty sad state of affairs.
So
it makes me feel that exactly. Now, I happen to be sort of aware of stuff, and I know some of the younger generation that are running even in city elections. And it's time for new younger people to step up. Some of us have been grooming some of the younger people, but there's only anywhere from 12 to 17% vote in city elections among all the registered voters. So people complain and moan about taxes, everything else, but guess what? Most of those people don't even vote.
So I actually, one of my surprises around this table was that there was actually quite a bit of nuance among the participants at the table about taxation.
Yeah.
There was not really any strident, we should always raise taxes or we should never raise taxes. I was really happy to see that willingness to kind of at least think about it and to realize that maybe taxation is going to be part of the solution.
Remember, you can count on death and taxes.
Death and taxes, it's true. So our final question is, and this would be a brainstorm list, and so what are the actions related to the nation in debt that we should be doing, we could or should be doing here in Salina? And a brainstorm means you just throw it, you put it up there and you see what's going to stick. But what are things we should be doing in Salina, Kansas?
To help with the idea of national debt.
Yeah, or actually even debt at the level of our community.
Because remember, Salina's like $180 million in debt right now. Now, hopefully it'll all get paid off. Yeah. But we'll see.
I know definitely getting my generation and younger more involved in solving the issue, definitely, because they are the future and they need to be part of this discussion more.
Yeah, and they ought to be running for office too. Yes. I mean, I think Gary already said that. That's a really great point, that we need younger people to run for office.
And people from different groups around the town.
Yeah. So that the governing folks aren't quite such a homogenous group. And I don't know if this is still a problem, but I heard several weeks ago that in Salina we're not seeing our sales tax are kind of flat. Do you know, Mike, anything about that topic?
I think I heard something along those lines where, and that was a whole part of why the revenues weren't coming in right. Mm-hmm. And so they're all concerned about that. But, I think it's, anyway, we won't get off here.
No, I mean, we're talking about our community. What are we going to do about that?
I was just saying right now, it's just that people are hurting. People do not have the disposable income that all these promises and all these hopes have been based on. Mm-hmm. And so now, what are we going to do from here? How are we going to get things in? They talk about having better paying jobs. Okay, that's fine. That's great. There's a new aircraft manufacturer coming in here. That's what, $23 an hour, I think is what I saw. That's a great start.
It's a great start.
But actually, over the years, where's the major industries that came in? Mm-hmm. I mean, Tony's came in back in the 60s? Yeah. If I remember right. Phillips came in the late 60s, early 70s. I mean, okay, where's our other manufacturers that are coming in here? So, that would help out a great deal. But, again,
I think communities are also a little tired of being held hostages by would-be companies coming into a community and saying, we'll bring some jobs to town, but we don't want to have to pay taxes. Yeah. We want to use your infrastructure. We want to, put potholes in your road.
You give us $10 million in tax.
Right. Exactly.
Dump oil on your land.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. So, I want to just do a go-round, a kind of a final go-round on any other brainstorm ideas you have to help Salina. Try to keep it to a sentence.
I'm very familiar with one of the premier manufacturing, best money-making businesses in town. I personally heard the CEO say, by the way, Chamber of Commerce, by the way, economic development people, I just want you to know, and he backed up on his chair and said, I don't want you to bring in any advisement to this community, and any research is telling us that we need more companies like my company, because I don't want to have to raise wages to my workers, and I don't want any competition coming in here.
Okay. So, Erin, do you have any thoughts about a brainstorm idea that could help Salina?
Maybe I don't know, when work is done, say, to the infrastructure here, keep the work local, done by local workers, things of that nature.
That's a great point.
Good idea.
Yeah.
That just thing that jumped to my mind is there is a group here in Salina that is talking about expanding the city commission from 5 members to 7 members. Divide the town up into 6 spots. The commissioners will be elected locally. You know, like the north end of Salina might actually get somebody on that city commission. And of course, the mayor would be elected at large. You know, that might be something to keep an eye on and think about in the future.
Thanks. Sarah, do you have a?
I think it's hard because having a solution to getting people involved in part of the discussion, I've been trying to do that. And among people my age and family and stuff like that, and it's hard. I mean, I don't think I could really, because I think getting people involved really is what we really need to do, and how to do that. It's kind of a tough thing to.
Yeah, I think to even ask what disenfranchises younger people, I think to answer that question would be good. Okay, Jennifer, do you have a brainstorm idea for helping Salina?
I'm with them. I think manufacturing jobs is huge. It's been so long since one has been brought into town. And even the county. I mean, it's not just Salina that doesn't have it. It's Saline County as a whole.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Maribel. Okay, thanks. All right, well, thank you for your participation tonight. I think this has been a really productive group discussion, and we have deliberated well on this topic, and I thank you for your interest and support in Talk Salina.